When we first moved to New York, we had a great apartment that was dirt cheap.
And we found out why it was so cheap.
Our friend Amy said there was a great apartment in her building.
Dirt cheap, but it's a hotel for women. Okay, we made one adjustment.
Now these other ladies know us as Buffy and Hildegard.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And wow, does things really just come full circle in this thing. Things that they want to keep away from our eyes for years and years and years, and then wham, bam, there it is in the end. Of course, they had to know we would be looking for it. And what's interesting to me is, my guy Harsh, I was watching his rebuttal to the reaction video that I did the other day. Me and Harsh are cool. But when he was trying to think about what I was trying to say as it related to, say, the Aryan groups. And in his mind, it was, well, the Aryan groups had so much power because of their organization that they were controlling the university and everything else and had all this influence. And that's exactly the opposite of what I actually mean when I say that the university would want to cover up being a hit. What I mean is not the Aryan Knights have, influence in the university. What I mean is the university would absolutely want to cover up a hit on their students by traffickers. I mean, in reality, if you really understand how things work, 4 students being unalived is terrible PR for a university, terrible PR. 4 students being unalived by frat boys would be a terrible PR for the university, but it would be an expected outcome. When you have 4 students that are unalived, naturally everybody's going to try to find whoever's close to them that did it. So it wouldn't have been a shock to the community or the country that, frat boys did it. In fact, it would have been something that would, I think, put a lot of people to ease. They wouldn't have thought, well, the frat system's what did it. They would have just said, well, there's some bad apples in a frat. However, if word got out that a trafficking group, real scary individuals did this, there's not a parent in the country that would allow their children to go to that school after hearing that. What? Are you telling me that real criminals are unaliving students? Well, my student's not going there. That is far too dangerous. See, that's how people think. University knew this. Everybody knew this. So the covering up who really did this crime was essential for them. And then when you get to FBI, DOJ, they had an investigation going right alongside the investigation into the Idaho 4, and it's documented. I mean, it's documented. We've documented it through case files. So they were already there investigating. They jumped on this case really quick. And I have a very strong inclination of why they would want to keep things quiet as well. And we'll get into that in another video because I got to bring everything full circle in this. This is Dylan Part 2. And this is going to be a 5-part series. I already put out part 1, but in this particular episode, we're going to focus in on some very straight up facts around what we now know happened right after this crime. And it is the most telling thing that I can think of. Because many, many times, for those of you that have followed me for a long time, when you look at my list of connections, right? As I've gone through and I've connected the trafficking organizations to the families in this case, all the way down from one Aryan group to another, all the way through Boise. I mean, starting at Arizona, going all the way up to Seattle and Tacoma, all the way across to Spokane, into Coeur d'Alene, straight down through Moscow, through Julietta, through Lewiston, Clarkston, straight down to Boise. And we've connected all of the people in those organizations and how it relates to this case. I've done it a million times. And one thing we've always pointed to was the fact that the connections seem to double connect in certain places. Like, for instance, with one of the roommates in the case, Dylan. I mean, her boyfriend at the time, Quinn, his father, not some distant relative, but his father was actually, well, I mean, I'm going by what I've heard. People that said that they really know about this stuff have told me, and obviously I can figure it out just by looking at the criminal history and the time in prison and tattoos and hand signals and everything else. But people have actually said that he's a known affiliated Aryan Knight. And the coincidences around that are just too glaring, and they always have been, and I've always pointed to those. But we've never had any evidence, which was very strange to all of us, that Dylan had any contact with Quinn the night of the unaliving, which the fact that there wasn't any evidence that pointed to that was even more shocking, considering you'd think her boyfriend would be the first person she would call. But we didn't have any evidence of that, but now we do. And the evidence that we do have is very, very telling. Hold on to your hats, folks. Dylan Part 2 is going to get into all the connections we keep talking about. And the last thing I do want to mention, because I was listening to the video, actually, when I was watching back Harsh react to the video that I'd reacted to. It's like, I won't react to it again because it would be 10 reactions on the same video now. But one thing I failed to point out, and Harsh points it out himself many times, is the fact that Steve G, when he's talking at CrimeCon about the hit that he's heard about that would be put on Brian Kohberger in prison, one thing that Harsh kind of glosses over, and I didn't mention either, is if Steve G knows about a hit that's going to happen on Brian Kohberger in prison, guess who actually commits hits in that prison? You got it, none other than the Aryan Knights. So basically what Steve G is saying when he makes that statement unwittingly is he has direct access to somebody that has direct access to those Aryan Knights in that same prison, which I find interesting. Hold on to your hats, folks. Let's see what we got here. Bamshell time now. First of all, this Erin Williamson, she's doing a really good job as she goes through this interview with Dylan. If you truly understand what she's doing and what she already knows about Dylan and what she's really likely trying to uncover. And as I follow through the DOJ manual on an interview like this, I mean, it's really interesting to see how she's conducting the interview based on the manual. I mean, it's pretty cool. But here's what we got to understand first. Going into this, what Williamson would know, because it's part of their training, understanding your victim. Understanding the victim is important to a successful interview. They have to know, is she street smart? Williamson would know if Dylan was street smart going into this. Does she express emotion or appear hardened? I would think Dylan absolutely expresses emotion more than appears hardened. Does she seem fearful? I would say that, yeah, she definitely seems fearful the way that she tries to overcompensate every time she says something that has a little bit of truth in it. She immediately tries to overcompensate, as I'm going to show you. And does she have a history of being manipulative? Is she angry? Well, I don't see any signs of angry, but this is just things that Williamson would be prepared for going into this interview. Then when we look at things like this, loyalty, the victim may be loyal to, in this case, they're using this, but I think you could easily replace the P word with boyfriend, her father, etc. So it's literally an interview designed to separate somebody from somebody that's controlling them to try to get truth. This is the whole purpose of this interview, which I find fascinating. And why would they be loyal to whoever they were loyal to? Out of fear, prior life experiences, belief they aren't worthy of a better life. Unconventional interview. Remember, this is an interview, not with capital letters N-O-T, an interrogation. So even in their manual, they're pointing out the fact this is not an interrogation, it is an interview, but it's a very unconventional type of interview. And overcoming the bond between whoever is the controlling factor and the victim takes time. This is literally an interview of Dylan assuming that she knows something more than she knows and she's protecting somebody. You must work to establish trust with the victim. Don't make promises you can't keep. What to expect? Hostility and deception. So while everybody's calling out, Dylan's lying, you got to understand Williamson is expecting her to lie. Affection for and loyalty to whoever their controlling party is. Shame and or embarrassment. Attempts by victim to control the interview, changing the subject, identifying the wrong person in control, blaming police or arguing their charge. Well, I don't guess she had a charge. Manipulation. So Williamson is expecting all this in the actual interview, and I'm confident that she would be expecting all this because the way that she conducts the interview follows the guidelines to a T. And one of the first things they talk about is building rapport and then interjecting things before they get into a really focused part of the interview. They will tell them that participants will be introduced to various types of evidence, such as audio clips, subject statements, text messages, and more. They tell them this in a prompting way so that whoever they're talking to will think, oh no, they know more than I know, so I better come up with some reasons for some things. And she does that absolutely perfectly. As she goes through the initial portion that we've already kind of covered, then she gets to this part where she says, yeah, so I want a couple things. One, I forgot to mention. She didn't forget to mention, this is her following the manual. I've got some chats and some pictures that we may look at. See if you can help me out with them. I'll let you know when we get there. I just like to let you know that from the beginning. What she's doing right here is prompting Dylan to let her know that they're going to be talking about things that she has seen in Dylan's chats and her pictures, and she needs to keep that in mind as they move forward, because the next step in the process is what's called phase 5, and that's the free narrative. After the topic is raised, the interviewer asks the victim to provide a narrative description of the events. The free narrative encourages the victim to describe the events in their own words. Start at the beginning and go all the way to the end and tell me everything that happened, even things you don't think are important. Or tell me about everything from the beginning to the very end. The most common interviewer error is omitting the narrative phase or shifting too soon to a specific question. So this is the part in the interview where she's interjected. We've got your text messages and we've got pictures and things we're going to be asking you about. But then she immediately shifts to this free narrative. And here's how she does it. Dylan says, okay, to the text messages, but then Williamson immediately shifts and says, but so you're talking a little bit about the kind of like when you woke up and calling your friends. Yeah, I want you to go back to the beginning, like Saturday or when the night started. So this is her way of actually following these guidelines to the free narrative portion. And she's going to let Dylan go through everything from start to finish before she ever starts to dive in on specific questions. So she's doing a really good job. And the reason she's doing a good job is as Dylan's going through and explaining everything, look at Williamson. She goes through and she's telling her about all this stuff. All she said, okay, She's letting Dylan tell the whole story. She's not interrupting her at all. Now, here's what I do find that's interesting on a side note. As she's going through all this, like, she's going through all this, and it stops right here with, we came back home like around 5 o'clock-ish, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe later. I can't exactly remember. And then this entire portion of the interview is cut out. It's all missing. It goes from we got home at 5 o'clock to I think it was after the second time I heard what I thought I heard could be someone crying. It starts up with she's already talked about hearing Kaylee in the living room, probably gone into some big detail about that, and they've cut it all out so we can't see it. And they pick it up from how she's explaining the difference between the person that she heard going up the stairs and saying someone's here being Kaylee and being unsure about the person that was sobbing in the bathroom. Thought it was Kaylee, but maybe it wasn't. And that is the critical part in every one of her interviews. She, all the way through the grand jury testimony, never stops talking about Kaylee was in the living room. She went upstairs, screamed someone's here, and she ran downstairs. Where she gets even a little bit, even acknowledges a little bit that she thought it was Kaylee in the bathroom crying. She acknowledges that it was likely Xana in the bedroom crying. That is the two differences, but she never, ever wanes on Kaylee in the living room, going upstairs, hearing Murphy screaming, someone's here, running back downstairs. Never wanes off of that. That is her story from start to finish, and it matches the evidence in the case, and that is what everybody wants to hide. I guarantee it. But it's not what we're talking about in this one. As she continues to go through, so she's going through, talking about everything, talking about the guy in the mask that she's seen, and she's getting a little bit more specific. We'll talk about that at another time. And then she gets down to here, oh, and I wasn't worried. Every time she goes through and says something that she knows she should have been worried about, she immediately follows it with a statement to try to make it not look as bad. And I wasn't worried. I was just like, why the F is there someone in our house? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I remember texting Bethany, and I was like, there's a guy in all black. And Bethany had gone, Xana was wearing all black, and I think that's what made my mind think everything was fine. Now watch this. And I think that's what made my mind think everything was fine, because Bethany said that Xana was wearing all black. Every time she makes a statement like that, but then she goes, wait a minute, they've got my messages. You can see it happening in real time. This is where Williamson prepping her that we're going to be talking about your messages and your pictures makes Dylan have to tell some truth here. And the truth she tells is very shocking to me, and it brings us back to the beginning of this case, and it seals for me the whole deal, y'all. I also had text my boyfriend. Now, we know her boyfriend is Quinn Kelly. Quinn Kelly lives in Boise. Quinn Kelly has a Snapchat or an Instagram where it shows him in Boise on the night of the crime at 3 a.m. Coincidentally, it's a perfect alibi for Quinn. So I don't believe Quinn was there and had anything to do with this, because he's got a picture alibi. But I think it was very smart of him to do that with that picture alibi, because he knows he would have been brought into this thing. And I can guarantee it based on what she's saying right here. She says, I also had text my boyfriend. I don't remember exactly what time. Well, that's okay, Dylan, because your statement here is going to tell us exactly what time you did it. And I was like, there's someone in our house. And Kaylee said someone was here and someone was crying in the bathroom. So you can see right here, just as she's explaining her conversations with Quinn, she knows that it was Kaylee, said someone was here, and now she knows that someone was crying in the bathroom. She knows that someone likely wasn't Kaylee. You can see the difference almost all the way through this stuff. But I don't understand what's going on. So here's what she tells Quinn, right? I was like, there's someone in her house, and Kaylee said someone's here, and someone was crying in the bathroom, but I don't understand what's going on. So Quinn quickly calms her down. Now, how does Quinn know what's going on? He shouldn't have a clue, but he seems to have a pretty good clue. And he was like, well, you guys have a party house. Could it just be like someone had just been drunk walking through? Could it just be like someone had just been drunk walking through? Like drunk people just walk through their house. And like people, this is the way she explains this is very interesting. People probably know, or there's probably a few people that did know our house code, because the house, the girls before us had, and then she goes in, this is almost crazy the way she says this. Look at these quotes. This is Quinn's statement. Well, you guys have a party house. Could it just be like someone had just been drunk walking through? And like there's probably a few people that did know our house code. And then she jumps around and tries to make it sound less conspicuous. Because the house, the girls before us had the same house code that we do now, and we've told our close friends, and then stuff gets passed around. So this is where what Quinn is saying to her and what she's trying to, say to try to make it less conspicuous, what he's saying to her. This is how you have to separate the two. So when he told me that, I was just like, not worried at all. I'm just like, okay, like, obviously, just kind of freaked out. It isn't really like, obviously just kind of freaked out, or is it, I'm just like, okay, like, like Quinn knows, obviously. And I'm just kind of freaked out. Like, why was, obviously I would be freaked out if anyone was in her house. But I wasn't worried like freaking out. And I was texting Bethany and I was like, I'm scared to run downstairs because I have to go out of my room. I'd rather just stay in my room. So basically what she's saying here is just this quick little text message with Quinn. Well, you guys have a party house. Could it just be like someone had just been drunk walking through? And like there's probably a few people that didn't know our house code. And that just takes everything. And then she's not worried at all. Yeah, right. You can see from a mile away, based on the type of interview this is, and I think Williamson would have known it at this point, the person that calmed her down that quick with those words is the controlling factor in her life. This is the one that she's protecting, because as you go through Dylan's phone activity, and she's texting, she starts calling. Where does all this start? It starts. All right, so Eric Uber, she creates the Brittany Fernandez contact. She gets the first call from Bethany, 4:19:07 for 23 seconds. So that call's over at 4:19:30. She tries to call Xana, tries to call Kaylee. We got 0 seconds on both. And then she calls Bethany at 4:20 and 28 seconds. Stays on that call for 41 seconds. Then tries to call Maddie. And then the texting begins between her and Bethany. No one's answering. I'm confused right now. Kaylee, what's going on? Bethany, yeah, dude, what the F? Xana was wearing all black. Freaking out right now. No, it's like a ski mask almost. Shut the F up. Actually, like he has something over his forehead and little ND mouth, little no mouth. Bethany, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. So am I. My phone is going to die F. Come to my room. Run down here. Then there is this little outgoing phone call to Ethan Chapin. It's identified, 4:24:39. Then it's back to Bethany. I'm screwed though. Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone. And that last little text was at 4:20, what? 4:25:16. Between that text and this phone call right here she makes, you can hear somebody actually going out of the front of the house and getting into a car and shutting the door. And then a phone call is made at 4:27:11. She didn't say she called Quinn. She said she messaged him. This phone call right here, I would bet my last nickel went to Hunter Chapin. No doubt in my mind. That's why they've never identified this phone call. Then after that, they have identified these two Snapchats as going to Ethan. And then she tries to make a 6-second phone call to Kaylee. Pretty half-hearted there, I guess. And then this is very strange. See how they do these little boxes with phone calls and these little boxes here with the Snapchat. We know these are Snapchat because it says Toyo page group peekaboo. But then all of a sudden, when you get down here to the next phone call that she makes to Xana, and then so forth and so on, in between all that, there's this weird little box right here that's kind of hard to detect. And it just says interaction, and it is a Snapchat outgoing message, 4:27:52. This is the only anomalous message during this time frame because she doesn't get back on until after 5 a.m. So either this is the message to Quinn, and if it is, where is the message back? So it says interaction, so maybe that is a complete interaction versus, let's see, these up here just say outgoing messages on Snapchat. Okay, so this is an interaction, so we can be fairly certain that at 4:27:52 is when she's talking to Quinn. As I go through his extensive criminal history, obviously, but as I was going through looking at some of it, I found something very weird. Let's see. Let's go down a little bit. He has an alias. Look at this. Jeremy Kelly, a.k.a. Antonio Stefan Gregory. What kind of alias is that? These criminals in Idaho are very strange. So when you look that up, I mean, there's actually a couple of these Stefan Antonio Gregory's. Like, this one's born in 1982. This one, born in 1976, and he is actually Jeremy Lee Kelly. So how do you have these guys? I mean, like my guy Burroughs, right? The way that I found the real criminal history for Burroughs is I had to go back and find old newspaper clippings up in Coeur d'Alene of when he was arrested when he was young, and his name was Kachka, not Burroughs. Somewhere during his life, he went from Kachka to Burroughs in his adult life. Now I've got Jeremy Kelly going from Jeremy Kelly to Gregory Antonio or Antonio Stephen Gregory. And I don't know what he started out as. Did he start out as Antonio Gregory and then shift to Jeremy Kelly, or vice versa? I have no idea. But I do know it's very strange, and I do know we're getting closer to the final pieces of this puzzle. Now, we always knew and speculated because we knew that Dylan's boyfriend, his father, was an area knight. I mean, we've known that forever. We've known the connection there, but we've never been able to bring it, full fold because there was never any documentation of any conversations that Dylan had with Quinn that evening. We knew Quinn was in Boise because he posted an Instagram post at 3 a.m. showing him in Boise, which was a perfect alibi because he's 6 hours away. But now we've got documented conversations during the critical time in the crime where Dylan was freaking out until she had a message conversation at that exact time with her boyfriend Quinn that calmed her down, which tells me that this was a very planned out thing. They knew who they could hurt and who they couldn't, and they knew who wouldn't talk because of reasons Aaron Williamson is trying to uncover. Let me know your thoughts, folks. Now, it's been so long since I've done the real deep dives on Kelly, which I did extensive in the past, but I don't know that I recognize that, you know, he went by that alias. So whenever I find an alias for one of these individuals, like I did with Michael Burrows, he was actually originally Michael Ketchka, well, then it usually opens up a whole world of new information about those individuals. And it's interesting to me how they're able to change their names so frequently and have completely different aliases than their own names. I mean, when you get into the criminals in Idaho, it gets kind of deep. But I'm going to continue to look at that connection. But I think it's quite clear now, to me anyways, why Dylan wasn't harmed. Let me know your thoughts. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. I got another video coming out here in just a little bit because I've been asked since the very beginning of this thing, what about if we can see the contents of the stomach? Well, now that we actually do get to see them, and I've been just kind of sideways for the last couple of weeks looking for them because I watched other creators and they had this, I thought it was like some kind of spreadsheet that listed the contents and hours and all this kind of stuff. And I've been looking for this thing high and low, never could find it. Finally asked my members, where do you find this thing these people are talking about? And when one of my very sharp members told me exactly where to find this stuff in the autopsy results, I realized that what I've been seeing other people talk about is some AI thing. And AI, I'm telling you, if you don't go back and verify it, once you look at it, you'll find that 99% of the time, the first answers that AI gives you is always wrong. They're almost always wrong. You have to go through and fix it. So what I'm going to do is, I've already got a lot of it recorded, but I'm going to bring you the real autopsy stomach content results and what they actually mean. And I think a lot of people will be surprised. Pov's out.
Oh, gonna give it a shot. Only one of me to shield you all from the enemy. You're a superhero. You're a superhero.